In the grand scheme of things, Arkansas kind of has Texas A&M's number. Let's talk about why that's the case and where the Aggies rank among the rivals for the Razorbacks.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am Curtis Wilkerson, joined today by Andrew Ellis for another Friday crossover episode. Little pod at the Palace, little bombastic podcast mesh up here. It is Texas A&M week for Arkansas football, and if you follow Andrew and I, you know that you can find us on Inside Arkansas Live Monday through Friday at noon every day with John Neighbors. You can find us on the Pod of That Nature, where we do talk a lot of football, but when it comes to the niche, I'm kind of the basketball guy. Andrew is definitely the baseball guy. So we've been having some fun looking at Arkansas's upcoming opponents on the football schedule and just talking about some memories from those particular sports and where these rivalries rank maybe across the three major sports. Andrew, my friend, let's start here. Are you happy, mad, or sad that this is the last installment of the Southwest Classic at AT&T Stadium? And how are the vibes going in this matchup?
I'm definitely not mad. I'll say maybe sad because I really don't care. I'm pretty indifferent for the most part, but I'll go sad just because it marks kind of the end of an era. And as we talked about on our show today with John, it's an era that really wasn't as fulfilling as we thought it was going to be. When Arkansas and A&M first started playing in Jerry World, at that point in time in 2009, it was like playing inside Disney World. It was like the coolest thing of all time. Everyone was so buzzed about it. And, then when A&M joined the SEC, it was going to be this awesome thing. And it just hasn't been very kind to the Arkansas Razorbacks. So hard to say that I'm too upset about seeing it go. But really, I guess it just marks the end of a little bit of an era. But it's an era that for the most part, the Razorbacks would like to forget, which gives me a little bit of sadness. And so overall, I think it was kind of time for them to move this back to the school's campuses, but a little sad from a nostalgic standpoint of thinking about what could have been.
Yeah, I think I'm exactly at that same point. I definitely, at the end of this game, I think I'm going to be a little bit sad. Hopefully it's not because the Razorbacks lost another heartbreaking one-score game in this series, but more so because, it has been kind of cool, and it's sad to see something like that end. But I think that's going to go away real quick when this series gets back on the campuses. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like Sam Pittman said, COVID somehow moved this game to Texas A&M and College Station for a one-off. And then from the sounds of it, or at least logic would tell you that it would be in Arkansas in Fayetteville the next time they play. Getting that series on campus, I think, will be really, really cool and probably strengthen a rivalry that, my goodness, man, in all the sports, it dates back a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because when I was growing up, I'm 26 years old. I think that math is correct. And so I don't have a ton of memories of like back in the day when Arkansas and A&M were Southwest Conference rivals. My dad does, and he can kind of fill me in on it. But it's weird how back in 2009, when this whole thing started, like I had nothing. Like I had zero animosity towards A&M. It was just kind of one of those things. I knew I was not supposed to like A&M. But I will say, man, I've really grown to hate these bastards, man. It really is that way. Like I'm not. I really like making fun of them. I like making fun of the dances, the fake military outfits, all of it. It's really good stuff. And so I think during this time period, Arkansas and A&M really, the rivalry is a real thing now. Whereas I feel like when they first entered the SEC, it was kind of like we knew we were supposed to be rivals. But yeah, I agree with what you said though. Like I can't wait for these games to be on each other's campuses. I was not there when Arkansas played A&M in 2013, whenever it was Johnny Manziel coming to town, and I wasn't there in College Station in 2012, of course. Unfortunately, my brother was, but so I'm excited to just see what that's like. I mean, you see what Texas is like whenever they come to town. I'm sure it's not going to be that crazy, but these two fan bases, man, I think it's going to be nice for them to do the home and home rather than having to share the place that's not really anyone else's. And so, yeah, I look forward to the next chapter, but hopefully Arkansas can go out with a bang with this one, man. I think us knowing that this is probably the last time they're playing should make it a little fun tomorrow, where hopefully they go out with a bang and it's like, all right, we're moving on, end of an era. Hogs ended it well.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny, you mentioned, Arkansas, being able to make fun of the Aggies for some of the weird things they do. It's kind of nice because there's a lot of low hanging fruit where people, opposing fan bases might give it to the Razorbacks and people make fun of the hog call. They call it weird or whatever. Yeah. So it's nice for Arkansas to be able to have an easy opportunity to give a little bit back. It's interesting, man, because we know that Texas A&M has kind of dominated this series in football, especially lately, recent history. Their basketball team at Texas A&M has been much better under Buzz Williams. Baseball has really gotten it rolling. And so I think we're in store for some great memories to come, because it seems like all the programs in both schools in the three major sports are in a pretty good spot, or maybe trending in the right direction. We'll see about Arkansas football here, obviously. But historically speaking, Arkansas has had a pretty significant edge over the Aggies across the three major sports. I went and calculated the numbers. Arkansas holds a 58.1% winning percentage in the three major sports. It's a 201, 145, and 3, because football's weird and they allowed ties across the three major sports. You know, like football, despite some of the headaches they've had in Jerry World, I mean, 42, 35, and 1. And obviously that was a lot better a decade ago. It seems like basketball is kind of carrying the water, 108 and 61s. Like they've really been dominating that series. Baseball, I'm anxious to hear your take on this, because I got to admit, it was closer than I thought. I had to go back into the game notes from last year and calculate the series records from that. 51-49 advantage for the Razorbacks, 23-17 under DVH.
Yeah, and it seemed like last year Arkansas also might have dodged a little bit of a bullet here, where A&M hires Jim Schlossnagle, clearly one of the best coaches in college baseball. He immediately gets them rolling. They beat Arkansas in a series in 2022. They beat Arkansas in a series this past year in 2024. Now, Arkansas did sweep them in 2023, but where it was like, oh man, it looks like Arkansas is going to have to deal with a monster. A&M was so close to winning the title this past year, and then Schlossnagle leaves them high and dry. And so A&M fans really can't even do too much of a victory lap over the recent success they've had over Arkansas in baseball. And I'm assuming A&M is going to continue to be a force to be reckoned with in baseball. But I agree with what you said, man. The future looks bright for this rivalry in all three major sports. Because Buzz Williams, say what you want about the guy, like he has a pretty high floor as a coach. Like A&M's not just going to be a bottom feeder in basketball anytime soon. And Arkansas with Cal, we certainly do not expect the Hogs to be taking a massive step back or anything. I mean, last year was as bad as it's going to get.
True.
And football, we'll see. Well, we'll see. Mike Elko's a good coach. He's one where I would throw him in the high floor category, where A&M's certainly not just going to bottom out under that guy. Worst case scenario, you're looking at a 7-5 type of team year in and year out. And so we'll see if Arkansas is able to hold on to that football lead as the generations come and go. But I do think that now at this point, like in 2024, I just feel so much differently about A&M than I did back in 2012 when they first joined the SEC. And now that A&M is no longer like the new kid on the block, I feel like Arkansas fans are more willing to kind of embrace this as like, I think a lot of Arkansas fans, if you ask around, might even say A&M is their biggest rival at that point, which really just wasn't the case 10, 12 years ago. And so it's been cool to watch it blossom. And yeah, I think there's enough history now, especially recent history in all three major sports, to where it really is cool and it's a fun thing to be a part of. And so I look forward to the future is bright for all three programs, or I guess all six involved in this situation. And yeah, this football, man, there's always so much stake in these football games. It kind of sets the tone for the entire athletic year. And so I'm excited to see tomorrow just another chapter of this fun thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And shout out to Schlossnagle for pulling a Chris Beard, which could mean a lot of things, but in this case, it means leaving an in-state university and going to the flagship and just breaking the hearts of a lot of people. But we're going to talk more specifically about this rivalry in basketball and baseball. But first, let's take a little break and talk to our partners. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast here, a crossover edition. Let's talk a little bit of hoops for a minute. Arkansas, Texas A&M. This is crazy, man. This series goes way, way back. I'm going to give you a little trivia here. What year do you think was the first time that Arkansas and Texas A&M met on the hardwood?
Like historically?
Historically, the first ever meeting.
got to be like early 1900s. Like I'm going to go like 1908, like, or is it later, a little bit later than that?
It's actually earlier than that, a little bit more
Wow.
recent. Yeah. 1924. This one goes
Oh,
back
okay.
to it was a hard fought 35-27 win for Texas A&M. And
Yeah, I
then
thought we were talking basketball. You saw that's a football score right there. That's a
it's
classic
unreal.
football score.
Yeah. I was looking at some of them. There were games like played in the low 20s and teens early on there. The game has definitely changed. This has been an interesting series. It's been a lot of fun. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, the coaching change at Arkansas with John Calipari coming in. I remember sitting in our office watching Kentucky and Texas A&M playing in a barn burner before an Arkansas game last year. Super high scoring game. We'll see. But it was a house of horrors, Reed Arena, for Eric Musselman. And you kind of alluded to this until last year, which was his worst team, Eric Musselman's, but they won both of those games against Texas A&M. And it was like Tremont Mark outdueling Wade Taylor in these crazy individual performances. It was nuts, man.
Well, the first game that we covered with John Neighbors, we won't go into detail about how we covered that game, but really our first game that we covered as a group together, and shout out to Scotty Bordelon too, he was there for that, was that Tremont Mark buzzer beater, or I don't know, buzzer beater, game winner, I guess.
Sure.
Game winner, had 35. It was an awesome performance. That was a super fun game and kind of a moment where we were like, hey, maybe Arkansas is back. They weren't. But then they had another one. They go to Reed Arena, a game that I believe we watched at Flyway.
We did.
Flyway together, and Arkansas really one of their three best performances of the entire year, if you ask me. I mean, that was an awesome one. And really just in recent history, like the matchup's been weird. Like I feel like there's been a lot of low scoring games in this series especially with Buzz and Muss. But it always seems to be pretty close. They had the weird like snow game a couple years ago where Arkansas beat them pretty good. It was actually one of Arkansas's better performances that year.
That was the random out of nowhere near triple double for Makel Mitchell.
Well, Makel Mitchell is known to do stuff like that. Just out of the blue, just have 9 blocks or something like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. Curtis, I need you to help me out here.
Okay.
What year was Chance Moore on campus at Arkansas? What basketball season was that?
That would have been the post-COVID year, the 2020-2021 season.
Okay, well, the year before that, Arkansas had an awesome win at A&M where Devo Davis stole an inbound pass and took it the other way, and it was a huge moment because I'll never forget being at practice when the Chance Moore was on campus, and he was trying to defend an inbound, and he wasn't doing it to Muzz's standard. Muss takes him over to the TV and makes him watch that clip of Devo defending that inbound pass and how aggressively he did it against A&M. And I think it was a bad A&M team, if I remember correctly, that Arkansas shouldn't have been having to scratch and claw to beat.
Okay, I remember this now. Chance Moore was a part of that class, so he would have actually been on campus the next year. Yeah, so that game you're referencing was 2020-21.
With like Moses Moody, Justin Smith, and all those guys.
Chance Moore played on the team that next year. You're 100% right. And that was crazy because it was post-COVID, and it was a deal where Texas A&M, they only played like 15 games or something the whole season because they kept coming down with the sickness or whatever, and they were having to cancel games, and it happened over and over and over with Arkansas, and they weren't very good. But yeah, it was crazy because Texas A&M had played it was like the slowest pace in the country, according to KenPom. And then they finally play Arkansas, and they're like playing like 40 minutes of hell. It was crazy. And it threw Arkansas off, and they also couldn't shoot threes, but then they were hitting a bunch on Arkansas. And it was a wild deal where, they had to really make some plays late. You mentioned that Devo play, which is a crazy steal on the inbounds. Must love that. Justin Smith dunked it. I also remember that there was a key Moses Moody blocked dunk in that game that kind of helped seal it towards the very end. It was absolutely nuts, man.
I tell you, one of our strengths as a staff, we just are able to pull very specific memories of stuff that we were there for. It's really awesome. I feel like there's another game that I'm missing.
Well,
maybe it was the blown lead in the SEC tournament that Arkansas had. I guess that was 2 years ago with Nick Smith. That's one that
A&M. Yeah, Texas A&M beat him 2 years in a row in the SEC tournament. Yeah, that blown lead, Nick Smith. I remember it was the one year I didn't go to the SEC tournament, and they beat Auburn with the Nick Smith jumper. And then they had Texas A&M. They were up double digits, and I was texting Trey Biddy saying, "Dude, they win this game. I got to go." And I was like packing during the second half as they blew it. Oh, yeah. Another one I remember, it was the 21-22 year. So I guess the year Chance Moore was actually on the team. I guess, right? Would that make sense?
21, 22. Yes,
Yeah.
because 2021 was the year we were talking about earlier, the year before.
And
Yes.
they had they went to overtime in that game, and it was when they wound up winning, and Stanley Amude had the big dunk right at the end, and it was almost like he dunked the lights out of the stadium because he dunked it, and like it was at the buzzer, and it wasn't a game winner, but he did that. The lights go out, and the little firework things start playing. It was like, man, he's like dunked the lights out of Bud Walton Arena. This is crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. There's been so many. I don't know. It's just weird because these three programs, football, basketball, and baseball, it just feels like they're aligned for some reason. Like there's something that ties them together. I know football, like A&M's had the upper hand, and I would even say, frankly, like as a program, basketball for Arkansas has had the upper hand here of the last decade or so. But it does just seem like these matchups just yield craziness. It's something fun about it. Curtis, I want to take a quick trip down memory lane real quick if I can.
Okay.
I want to talk about the 2015 Arkansas baseball team, which is one nobody talks about for anything other than it being the worst team that ever made it to Omaha from Arkansas. They got carried by Andrew Benintendi, but I kind of forgot about this until right before we did the show. So this was a year where Arkansas was like a bubble team pretty much all year, and they go to College Station to play the number one team in the country, the A&M Texas A&M that year, and Arkansas loses game one, 13-6, and the next day they had a doubleheader to finish up the series. And Arkansas was down like 6-2 when they went into a lightning delay, it was like an hour and a half lightning delay. Arkansas was down 6-2. They lost the night before. They come out of that lightning delay, score 5 innings right off the bat, score 2 more later, end up winning that game like 8-7. And then they blew them out in the game 3 series decider, win a huge road series on the road. That Arkansas baseball team ended up 15-15 in SEC play. So they just snuck into like kind of tournament contention. And I feel like that was kind of the turning point for that squad where they finished the year on a crazy run because it really wasn't going great for them in there. And Arkansas had a lot of good baseball situations against A&M. If my math serves me correctly, they swept them in 2018 at home. 2021, which is the next time that they came home because 2020 did not exist. Arkansas wins 2 out of 3, weirdly enough, because you remember that 2021 Arkansas baseball team didn't sweep anyone. So they beat that A&M team that was bad 2 out of 3. And then they sweep them in 2023 when nobody expected them to after Arkansas just dropped a series at Georgia, gotten swept at Georgia, I should say. And so I believe A&M is 8-1 or 1-8 in their last 3 trips to Baum-Walker Stadium. So they're coming back to Baum this year. So hopefully Arkansas is able to kind of keep that trend going. But yeah, in baseball, man, there's been a lot of fun series. And frankly, A&M's had their number at home as well. So it's kind of been going back and forth for these past, this past decade or so.
Maybe it was 2021. I guess it would have been right before we started working together. The main thing I remember was covering the spring football game and being freezing cold in that press box and then walking out of there with a stack of Domino's pizzas and having to go cover the Texas A&M baseball game, which was like starting at the same time. It was one of those work media Razorback doubleheader kind of things. It was a wild one, man. It was a long day for sure. But we're going to talk about where the Aggies rank among the rivals for the Razorbacks. We did this with Auburn last week, and it was a good time. But first, let's take one final break and hear from our partners. What's up, NFL fans? You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com. Check out their odds. I mean, we got a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans rolling around in Fayetteville. Maybe you like the Chiefs -7 on the road against Harbaugh and the San Diego Chargers. Maybe you're a Lamar Jackson guy. You like that -2.5 home favorites against the Buffalo Bills. Check them out. Make sure you do that. Visit FanDuel.com. All right, back for the final segment here of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, crossover edition. We've been talking about Texas A&M and Arkansas, and we've been doing a lot of discussion recently about the upcoming opponents on Razorback football schedule and where they fall in the grand scheme of things in terms of rivals. So let's do this. Buy or sell, Andrew. Texas A. I think I know where this is going. Texas A&M as a program is a bigger rival for Arkansas right now than Auburn, who we talked about last week.
Buy. I do buy that
too. Yeah,
I mean, maybe even across the board. I mean, it kind of fluctuates sport to sport, but I think across the board, A&M is a big time elite rival for Arkansas.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if we look at it from a football perspective, like I think we had Auburn maybe in not tier 1, but that next level of rivals for Arkansas. A&M would I mean, they'd have to be up there, right?
I mean, I was trying to think about it while you were reading that ad. I was like, how many programs am I confident that that are a bigger football rival for Arkansas? LSU and Texas are the only two I can even really see an argument for.
Yeah.
I mean, and like, look, those are, I'm sure it kind of varies depending on the person. Texas is going to be interesting now that they're in the SEC. Like, they could realistically be Arkansas's number one. I don't think Arkansas will be Texas's number one, but that's part of why I feel like Arkansas and Texas should just kind of embrace each other as their number one rivals. I mean, I know Mizzou's going to have something to say about that, but yeah, I think they're a top 3 minimum.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. Basketball is interesting because they had a good thing going, the Muss versus Buzz Williams things. Oh, by the way, we used to have these discussions a lot. So if there was a street fight between John Calipari and Buzz Williams, do you give Coach Cal better odds than you did Eric Musselman? I got to know.
I do, because 1, bigger guy. Yeah. 2, a little bit older. I mean, he's a little bit. I don't think Cal gets his hands dirty. I don't think the Godfather gets his hands dirty. I don't think he does. But he's Italian, dude. Like, I think he's got a little bit of that. He's got a little something to him. I feel like he would handle himself there.
He wouldn't fight a fair fight, and that's correct. Exactly how he should handle it. Exactly.
He didn't play a fair basketball game. He's not going to fight a fair fight.
In terms of basketball rivals, I mean, I think Kentucky's got to be up there at the top, given the John Calipari situation here, and it was beforehand anyway. Outside of that, you could really make an argument for a lot of different teams. Like, Alabama's really, really good right now. That was a heated one under Muss. I think it will still be because both teams are really good. But I guess in the same vein, you could say the same thing about Texas A&M because they just return the same team every year. Like, it's never going to change under Buzz Williams ever. I mean, we'll be doing this in 2034, and he'll still have Wade Taylor and Henry Coleman running around out there. So I would probably maybe not as high as I would have them in football, but they would definitely be a top 5-ish, I think, rival for basketball.
Yeah, I think top 5 is just fair. And speaking of teams that have the same team every year, Tennessee is one that I would say is like kind of a sneaky, like, depending on who you talk to, they might be a top 3 rival in basketball. Now, Kentucky's obviously always going to kind of be number 1 for Arkansas and probably everyone. And so, yeah, it is interesting. It's a different list. I don't think A&M's too far down the list, though. I think 5 is about right.
I think that's about right.
And then I think Auburn's another team that is kind of in this same echelon of like up there, and especially with Bruce Pearl being the coach, it's just tough to tell with a lot of these, honestly, because the programs are so different under each coach. And so it's like, if Bruce Pearl weren't the head coach at Auburn, in 4 years, I really don't think Arkansas and Auburn care at all when they play in basketball.
Right. And I also think it's a little bit more difficult nowadays in basketball specifically, in sports in general because of the transfer portal, but you see a ton of that in basketball. Plus the SEC is just so loaded as a league now. There's a lot of one and dones, very little roster continuity from year to year. And I think that's maybe why I feel a little bit stronger about A&M as a rival than I should, because they've got a guy like Wade Taylor back for the umpteenth season, and they probably felt the same way when it was, Devo running it back year after year. And so maybe that'll change a little bit moving forward, but the teams with more continuity, I feel a little bit more attached to, I guess, in terms of rivalries when it comes to basketball right now. What about baseball? Because I mean, we talked about the records in the head-to-heads, 51-49. It doesn't get much closer than that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We're like, LSU owned Arkansas in baseball for so long. Like when I was growing up, Arkansas just never beat LSU in baseball. So it was like hard to even consider Arkansas a rival with LSU. And it's weird that even as Arkansas's kind of ascended to join LSU there, and they've kind of taken turns being on top here lately, I don't feel like Arkansas and LSU have this like super heated baseball rivalry, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, I hate LSU more than anyone, but it doesn't really make any sense. Like DBH and Palmineri were just really good buddies, so it's like there was never really a ton of animosity. I think Arkansas hates Ole Miss and Mississippi State a lot in baseball. Like I think those programs are two who are like, in basketball, I wouldn't say Ole Miss. Shouldn't say that with basketball because Chris Beard's now going to be like, it matters.
It's going to get weird.
But like in basketball and really even football, I wouldn't say Ole Miss and Mississippi State are high up there. But in baseball, those are in your top 3 for Arkansas. I think A&M, especially given that Schloss kind of came and beat Arkansas a couple times. I think that rubbed a lot of Arkansas fans the wrong way. And on Twitter, certainly there's a lot of back and forth. Tennessee, of course, with Tony V, and now that they're pretty much the best program in the country, they're kind of everyone's rival.
It's going to be a fun conversation next week, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a great conversation next week. Because, I mean, yeah, Tennessee has kind of really become a great basketball and baseball rival. I think A&M is closer to where they are in basketball for baseball, even though I think there's some animosity. There's some heat there, but I wouldn't say either fan base is necessarily, like, circling that series like, oh, boy, that's going to be when it gets crazy. I think there's just, like, a lot of respect and some animosity there, like a fair amount, like in that 5 to 6 range.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. As we get out of here, let's talk just programs, big picture, rivalry, Arkansas A&M. Would you consider the Aggies a top 3 rival for Arkansas?
Curtis, I think I might. I really think I might, simply because it's like the weird law of averages a little bit, where like A&M is top 3 in football. So let's say they're the 3rd best rival in football and they're 5th in basketball, 5th in baseball. Well, Kentucky is maybe 1 in basketball, but they're like 13, 14 in baseball and 19 in football. So it's like, is Kentucky more of a rival than A&M? No. I think A&M is high enough in each sport, and some of their counterparts, like LSU, for example, again, not a huge basketball rival, not a huge baseball rival, weirdly enough. So it's like, I don't know. I think A&M's got to be top 3, like just all well-rounded. Arkansas fans are never going to not care when they're playing A&M.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm directly with you. They're up there for sure, and so hopefully the Razorbacks go down there to Jerry World and take care of business. And if they don't, then history tells us basketball will. And listen, you never bet against DVH; they're going to get it done this season. Do they get A&M in the regular season?
In the regular season, and they get them here.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, it'll be a good one. Also, Curtis, shout out to us for both rocking our Arkansas gear today. That's the shirt I almost bought at Alumni Hall. Like, I'm not kidding. I was literally like almost bought that. So it'd have been funny if I had and then was wearing it.
Yeah, that would have been some good twinsy stuff. I guess the only other shirts that we have that are the same, we can't wear because a company that doesn't exist anymore, or I think we both have the same Coors shirt.
Yeah, similar, but it's not quite the same. You're literally, it's a different shade, but we need to twin with that soon.
That's right. There we go. Well, hey folks, that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. For Andrew Ellis, this has been Curtis Wilkerson, and we will catch you guys next time. Everybody have a good one.